This tutorial is going to walk you through the process of creating your main effect and interaction effects graphs for RDA. We're going to go over setting up your data and creating the basic graph in Excel, and then we're going to go through a series of details to then tweak that chart so that it meets APA recommendations. These are going to include things like axis formatting, removing the grid lines, removing the border, adding markers for data points, editing the colors and the formats of the lines, inserting and editing your legend, and then adding error bars. So let's get started. Here I already have some data just pasted in from the SPSS output. So you need to make sure you understand what your data says and how it's laid out. Make sure you understand what the columns mean. So here I'm looking at the mean of a measure of self-esteem sliced by the level of compulsion to exercise and the level of media influence. To get started, it's easier to go ahead and rework your data so that it's in a format that Excel can use to create your graph easier. So I'm going to start by saying I want to look at this by the level of media influence. So my categories are lower and higher. So for now I'm just going to write these categories in here as reminders for myself. Okay, then over here we're going to have low, medium, and high. So then we want to make sure we're getting the right numbers. So we want to say lower level of media influence, low level of compulsion to exercise. Copy that. Lower medium, lower high, and then do the same for the higher measure. So again, we're looking at higher by low, higher by medium, and higher by high. So we have higher by low, higher by medium, and higher by high. Okay. Now to create the chart, I'm just going to select all those cells. I'm going to go up to Insert, and under Charts, there's a couple of different kinds of charts here, and I'm going to choose this one. You can see that it is the line graph with markers. You don't want to choose, you want to make sure you don't choose the stacked line graph. So it's a line graph with markers. So I'm going to choose that. So now I have a basic chart. So there's a number of things we need to do with this in order to get it into the APA format. First, some easy formatting. We're going to delete the title, so just select it and hit delete. Then we're going to delete the grid lines. So just click on one of the grid lines and make sure you see all the dots on either side and hit delete. Then we're going to delete the border. So if I click outside the chart, you can tell it's got a thin border around it. We want to remove that. To do that, I'm going to select my chart, go up to the top of the ribbon and look at Chart Tools, and then you'll see there's two different tabs, Design and Format. I want to click Format tab under Chart Tools, and then over on the left from your drop-down, I'm going to choose Chart Area, and then click Format Selection, and then I get the Format Chart Area options on the right. I want to change the border, so I'll expand border and just say no line. So now if I click back off of the graph, you'll see it has no lines around it. Okay, a few other things we need to do. Let's look at our axes. So our vertical or y-axis doesn't have a line on it, so we want to add that. I could double click on the axis and it brings up my Format Axis options. If you don't see that, you can go to Format, Vertical Axis. And I want to make some changes here. We're going to come back later and look at the minimum and maximum, so don't worry about that just yet. But you can think about the major units. So in this case, 1/10 seems a little finer grain that I need. You can make that maybe 0.25. It depends on your data, what makes the most sense. So I'm going to click on my Fill in Line section of the Format Axis dialog box, and I'm going to click Solid Line, and then I'm going to pick a color. I'm just going to make it black, because I'm going to make this in black and white, because we need to make sure that this is going to be readable when printed in black and white. The other thing we should change is under number. We want to be consistent. So in this case, not all of our labels have the same number of decimal places. We want to make them the same. So in this case, if I'm going to go by 2 decimal places, under number, we need to change the category to number, and then you have the option for decimal places. If you were only going by tenths, you would want to leave this at just 1 decimal place, but in this case I'll make it 2, again for consistency. Okay. I also want to edit my x-axis to match. So if I double click on that and go to my format axis options, under line, again I'm going to pick solid line and make it black. So now we have similar axes. Okay. So let's edit these data series lines. In color we could tell the difference between these two, but if we were to print this you might not be able to tell the difference. So I'm just going to select one of them, and then over on the right I'm going to click the fill in line icon, and under line I'm going to change the color to black, and then I'm also going to change the dash type. So I'm going to make this so I have one solid line and one dash line. So under dash type I'm just going to choose some dashes. Now also we want to change the way that those markers look because now they're still orange. So I'm going to click marker. Under marker options I can choose leave it as automatic, or I could choose built-in if I want to choose a shape. So let's say I want to make these squares. But then under fill I need to make sure I change the color to black and the border to black as well. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing on our other data series. I'm going to select it, I'm going to go to line, change the color to black, and I'm going to leave this one a solid black line like that. So then I'm going to go to marker and change the fill to black and the border to black. Next, let's look at our legend. So it automatically entered a legend here, and I could just select that and move it around if I want. And you could decide where to put that. Notice the legend is pulling the text directly from where I selected over in my initial spreadsheet. So we probably want that capitalized, the L and the H there, so let me just do that right over here. And remember, you are changing the words over in your Excel spreadsheet, and that automatically changes it in your graph because they're linked. The same applies for my labels down here, low, medium, and high. Let's capitalize those. So you could do this when you're setting up your data initially. Sometimes you need to just start it to see how this is going to start looking. So now let's go ahead and add some labels. So we have low, medium, and high, but low, medium, and high what? We need to tell the viewer of this chart what we mean. So let's insert some labels. I'm going to go back up to Chart Tools. This time I'm going to go to Design, and under Add Chart Element, choose Axis Title, Primary Horizontal. When I choose Primary Horizontal, it pops up a text box for me, and I could enter in here level of media influence. I could change this text just like any other text, just highlight it. I can make it bigger, smaller, whatever to meet your needs. Let's also add an axis on our vertical axis. So same thing, add chart element, axis titles, primary vertical. And now this is going to be our measure of self-esteem. I can change the size, and I can move it around. Sometimes it'll put this label on top of your data, and you just need to be able to move things around. You might need to move your plot area around a little bit or your label around a little bit to get everything lined up right. So now that the formatting looks pretty good, we want to go in and add our error bars. So Excel adds error bars in a number of different ways, but we want to calculate our own standard error and then base the error bars on that. So to do that, we first have to calculate those. So let's go back to our original data and start a new column. Label it SE for standard error, and then we need to calculate this. So as you know, the formula for standard error is the standard deviation divided by the square root of n. So to create this formula in Excel, we're just going to type the equal sign. We're going to select the cell with the first standard deviation, slash for divided by, and then the formula for square root is just SQRT. Open the parentheses and then click on the n and then close the parentheses. So your formula should look just like that. When you're done, just hit enter and it should fill out the value. Now we want to copy this formula down to the rest of our cells, so click on the cell that you just did, and in the bottom right corner of the cell is a little square. You want to grab that and pull it down. It's called the fill handle. Now that we've calculated all of our standard errors, we can go ahead and use those values to calculate our error bars. And we're going to go back to our Chart Tools Design tab, add chart element, and choose error bars. Now there's a standard error default in Excel, but you don't want to choose that. You want to go to More Error Bar Options. So choose More Error Bars Options. Now it's going to ask me which series I want to work on. If I already had a series selected, it would have just defaulted to that, but in this case, since I don't, it's asking me which one do I want to work on. And it's important to remember which one I choose. So in this case, I'll choose the lower series. So again, this is lower level of media influence. Click OK. And now I have our Format Error Bars options. So a few things to choose over here. If I go to Error Bar Options, we want to make sure the direction is both and style caps are on. But here we want to choose Custom. Again, we don't want standard error. And then we're going to click Specify Value. So now we need to tell Excel what values to use for our error bars. We're going to use the same value for both positive and negative. So first select what's in there already and remove it. And then we need to select our error values in order. So make sure, since my graph is low, medium, high, I need to select them in that order. So I want to select the value for the standard error for the lower level of media influence for low level of compulsion exercise. And then I can hold down the Control key on Windows or Command on Mac, and then select the lower level of media influence, medium level of compulsion, and lower level media influence, high level of compulsion. And that's okay. So now we want to click back over here on our negative error bar value, remove what's there, and do the exact same thing. Remember, the same values plus and minus. Lower low, hold down Control, lower medium, lower high, and click OK. Notice it changed our axis. That's why we didn't worry about that yet. We're going to fix that later. And now you just want to take a quick look and say, do these error bars look about right? So you can see these are relatively small errors, and if you just take a look at them, they look pretty much right on. So let's go ahead and do the next error, the next series. I'm going to select the series this time. You don't have to. And then go to Add Chart Element, Error Bars, More Error Bar Options. And now since I had a series selected, it didn't ask me which one I was working on. So I go back to Error Bar Options, Custom, Specify Value, and now I'm going to choose the values from my other series. Delete what's already in this dialog box, and now I'm going to pick higher, low, higher, medium, and then higher, high. And then I'm going to click in the negative error bar cell and remove what's in there. And I'm going to click higher, low, hold down Control, higher, medium, and higher, high. Click OK. Okay, so now I have my error bars. They look okay. But now we need to fix this vertical axis. So I'm going to double click it to pull up my options. I'm going to go all the way to the right, Axis Options, and see what our options are. So you need to make a decision of what your minimum and maximum should be. In this case, let's say my minimum should be maybe 2.5. Let's see how that looks. So that's okay. And you are going to have to decide what makes the most sense for your data here. Something else you might want to consider here is to look at your legend here. And so my legend just says lower and higher, but it's not really clear from looking at this graph, lower and higher what? Sometimes that will be in your caption, in your final paper, but you could, if you want, go ahead and put in a text box that lists what that is. So in this case, I will go ahead and do that. If you go up to Insert, Text Box, and draw a text box, and don't worry about where you draw it, you just want to select something, and then go ahead and put in what we're talking about here. So these are lower and higher level of media consumption. So of course I can edit the text and the size and the shape and all that how I want it. And then I can just adjust that so it's over my legend.